Namaste, greetings and blessings, and welcome to the Center for Spiritually Integrated Arts. This is our Sunday message, and I am Reverend Dr. Raymond Anderson, the founder and spiritual director of this center. And I invite you to watch not only this Sunday message, but any of our archived messages. I invite you to join any classes or events that we have going on. I invite you to reach out and email if you have any questions. Questions about this community, questions about me, questions about what we do, or questions about this science of mind and spirit, liberation theology that we practice and teach. And if by chance you find yourself seeking beloved community with other like-minded beings, even if you already belong, are a member of another community, church, or center, you are more than free to have multiple affiliations wherever you are fed and find community. You are invited. And lastly, feel free to click like, subscribe, and share this or any other message or announcements with others in your circle. And with that, much appreciation, love, and blessings. Enjoy the message. Namaste and greetings. Our conversation regarding On the Wings of Love continues as we talk about love's ascent. So if you are ready, buckle up. We start with a few questions. What does love feel like? Do we give and receive it? What does the absence of love feel like? What does it mean for love to ascend and for us to cultivate it? What does that mean? What does it look like? And when we cultivate and experience love in our lives, we tap into the uplifting power of spirit. What does that mean? And we are able to explore how this embodied love slash God elevates our spirits. What does that mean? And that enhances all of our relationships. What does that mean? What does that look like? Do we believe it? Are we living as though it's true? This week, we are going to explore some practical ways to cultivate and nurture love in our daily lives, not just on Valentine's Day. When you see these two structures, what comes to mind? Keeping in mind the title today, right? So the building is the Cathedral of Learning, University of Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. One of the buildings my father, as a construction worker, actually worked on. It's a very large building, as one could see. And if I were to ask you, what is the view, right? As we ascend, what is the view from each of these points that the arrow is indicating, right? Depending on where in the building you are, depends on what you see. As you ascend a spiral staircase, depending on what level you are, changes your perspective of what you, right? So to ascend or ascent, the act or process of ascending, to rise, to move up, to climb, move to a higher position. Some refer to it as a more powerful position, right? It is going up. That's the general concept. Whether one is looking top down, bottom up, same idea, ascent, to go up, to climb, to rise, to soar, to arise, to fly. We're on the same page so far? Okay. So when we're talking about love's ascent, what is our perspective that is changing? What is the view that is changing? What is the application that is changing based upon how we are embodying the concept of love's ascent? So, living fully means love ascends as who and what you are being. Living fully means dot, dot, dot. Actions speak louder than words. If you want to know someone's mind, listen to their words. If you want to know their heart, watch their actions. You can identify them by their fruit. In other words, by the way that they act. Living fully means love is seen in action as who and what you are being. To ascend, because we're going to talk about this, there's nowhere to go. There's linguistic convenience, but the general idea is, how are you demonstrating it? Brene Brown offers, we cultivate love when we allow our most vulnerable and powerful selves to be deeply seen and known. And when we honor that spiritual connection that grows from that offering with trust, respect, kindness, and action. vulnerability. That's a bad word for some of us in New Thoughts. It's a bad word for some of us, period. But some of us in New Thoughts still don't like that word. But we cultivate love when we allow our most vulnerable and powerful selves to be deeply seen and known, not only by others, but by ourselves as well. How are we honoring? How are we trusting, respecting, being kind, and showing affection to ourselves? She goes on to say, love is not something we give or get. It is something that we nurture and grow. Now, I can give you a pen. You can give me a pen. I'm going to give you some love and you give me we don't actually give or receive love. Keep that in mind. It is something that we nurture and grow, a connection that can only be cultivated between people when it exists within and as each of them. We can only love others. Key point, we can only love others as much as we love ourselves. We can only love others as much as, what does that mean? I can only give you as much water as I have. If I have a full container of water and you're thirsty, technically I can give you I can give you all of it. I can pour all of it into your cup, all of it into your life. But if I'm down here, I'm on fumes, then the only thing I can give you is fumes. I can't give you a full container that I don't have. I can't fully give you love that I don't have. I can only give you what I have. We can only love others as much as we love ourselves. She ends with shame, blame, disrespect. I almost started off like a song. Shame, blame, disrespect, and betrayal. I know, Tracy. I know. And the withholding of affection damage the roots from which love grows. So, in the same way that there are what we call pests in the garden, Tracy's familiar with the little worms that are eating up her food. Those things, the little pests, shame, blame, disrespect, and betrayal, are gnawing at the roots that damage our ability to have love grow. Love can only survive these injuries if these injuries are acknowledged, healed, transformed. And to do so is actually rare for the majority of humans, but that is our invitation nonetheless. We understand the concept of cultivate when it comes to, gardens, etc., right? Cultivate means to prepare the land for growing, whatever the crops may be, to nurture whatever it is you are growing, the plants, vegetables, flowers, trees, etc. We understand this concept as it applies to that. But what happens when we understand cultivate also means to nurture and to develop? How are we nurturing and developing growth to foster the growth of something like a relationship or a skill? Cultivate means to foster the growth in a relationship, to foster the growth of a skill, the development of a skill. Cultivate also applies when we talk about nurturing and development, as in developing certain qualities, certain abilities, qualities such as good judgment, the refinement of taste, one's palate, a strong work ethic, etc. Cultivate also social and personal development, seeking friendships and cultivating relationships, because it involves actively seeking out and nurturing said friendships, said relationships, and or business connections. All of these are things that we cultivate, as well as social and personal development. How are we refining ourselves? How are we working on our own personal growth and development through learning, through education, through any other forms of self-improvement. How are we cultivating? So, in essence, cultivate means, or it implies, effort, care, and focus on making something more fruitful, making something multiply and grow. Dr. Holmes says, but the great love of the universe must be one with the great law of its own being. And we approach love through the law. This then is the teaching, love and law. As the love of God is perfect, so the law of God is also perfect. We must understand both. Now, pause for a second, breathe that in, and ask yourself, how does this tie in and apply to what we've talked about thus far? Yeah, I'll let you simmer with that for a moment. Bell Hooks gives us to love well is the task in all meaningful relationships, not just romantic bonds. To love well, all meaningful relationships, not just romance. So, how often what does this word mean to you? Affection. And to show affection or receive affection, public displays of affection. What does it mean? And how often have we tainted the word? Simply, affection means to show care, attentiveness, closeness, intimacy, admiration. How many of us have made any of the concepts relating to affection mean sexual? We've made it a toxic kind of word in that we've limited it to mean a specific thing rather than the expansiveness of what it means. Same as the word intimacy. What does it mean? Knowing that there are several key aspects to intimacy: emotional intimacy, physical intimacy, which includes non sexual touch like hugging. So keep in mind, intellectual intimacy, spiritual intimacy, recreational intimacy, communication intimacy. What do these mean? And remember, we can only love another based upon how we love ourselves. We can only be intimate to the degree that we are intimate with ourselves without making this toxic as we have done as well. Intimacy has become a bad word kind of thing. Once again, relegated specifically to romantic or sexual relationships rather than the full expanse of what it can mean. Monday, June 3rd, 2024, one of the daily guides that I wrote, be bold in your practice. The first quote is a Toni Morrison quote where she said, you have to practice God. You have to think God carefully. Let that sink in for a second. You have to practice God. What did we say a few slides back? They will be known by their fruits. In other words, by their actions. Actions speak louder than words. You have to practice God. You have to think God carefully. Living fully means practicing God boldly, audaciously, not in secret. In what way are we doing this? In what way are we embodying and expressing and practicing God boldly? When you see any of these images, what comes to mind? Is there a word an idea, an emotion, a feeling that comes to mind when you see this? Could be several things: loneliness, isolation, sadness, grief. Specifically, we are delving into the space where the US Surgeon General in 2023 talked about our epidemic of loneliness and isolation. He warned that about half of US adults are experiencing considerable levels of loneliness, which can affect physical, mental, and societal health. Loneliness can affect our physical health. He says, I think there are a number of factors that are contributing to our loneliness. Today, we tend to get together less for dinners with friends or neighbors. We also have more time. We also have more of our time siphoned off by social media and online interactions, which may be helpful in some ways, but can be taking time away from other valuable in person interactions that we used to have. Even though there's a lot of great benefits to technology, what we see is that the ability to get everything delivered to us where we are means that we also just encounter people less often in the grocery stores, less often in the retail stores, less often in our neighborhoods in general. And this is an epidemic of loneliness and isolation that has been building for years. The pandemic just made it worse. And he goes on, so I invite you to come back and read the whole thing. In what way is loneliness preventing love from ascending? In what way is this lack of ascension impacting our health and well being? Are we self selecting to be isolated and not realizing that loneliness is brewing under the surface? And even if it's not loneliness for us, what are we doing individually and collectively to help take care of others who are experiencing loneliness? Dr. Vivek wrote a book, Together, The Healing Power of Human Connection in a Sometimes Lonely World. I've been thinking about doing this as a book study because this is important work. Because creating a world that works for all also means being a 21st century New Thought Good Samaritan. If I recognize a neighbor who is lonely, what am I doing to help them in that? How do I show up and be together with them, to be a loving presence with them? Because if I'm not doing that and I see it happening, then I'm part of the problem. When we are together, we are not just stronger, we are invincible. Let that sink in. Rendi is offering us, we are invincible when united we stand, divided we fall. So when we are together as beloved community, we not only are stronger, suffragists, when we are together, we are not just stronger, we're invincible. Civil rights movement, when we are together, we are not just stronger, we are invincible. The gay liberation movement, when we are together, we are not just stronger, we are invincible. We can apply this to any number of things. So in New Thought, are we together or are we siloed? Are we demonstrating our strength together? Because if we are doing that, then we're invincible, and a world that works for all is inevitable, if that's what we're doing. So Jesus called them together and began to speak to them in parables. How can Satan drive out Satan? If a kingdom is divided against itself, it cannot stand. If a house is divided against itself, it cannot stand. And if Satan is divided and rises against himself, he cannot stand. His end has come. Indeed, no one can enter a strong man's house to steal his possessions unless he first ties up the strong man, and then he can plunder his house. Now, note, keep in mind, we do the metaphysical thing regarding Satan, etc. So, how can a lie drive out a lie? Right? How can an accusation make an accusation less of an accusation? But the concept we're asking is, where are we divided against our own selves? What'd you say? Can I remix this for you? Yes, I can. How can a lie make a lie the truth? How can a deception deceive you into truth? A mind that is confused and divided against itself is a mind that is maligned with non life affirming mental equivalents. And that mind cannot truly prosper. Any aspects of our lives, any aspect of our lives that is divided against itself and is in opposition cannot cultivate peacefulness, cannot cultivate harmony or a world that works for all. Just as a consciousness of war cannot ever produce peace. Fear and imitation and intimidation, yes, but not peace. And you are welcome. Now, what do you see? Same thing I asked you on the other slide when I said, when you look at these images, what comes to mind? What's the feeling? What's the thought? Are you living fully? Is there affection? Is there intimacy? Is there connection? Are you living fully? And remember, part of living fully is practicing God boldly. Living fully means loving fully. Are you loving fully? Many people are starved for love. Their plates, their hearts, broken and empty. If God is love, however, why are so many of us starving for love? That's a really good question. If God is love, why are so many people starving? Not only will he work for food, but he is willing to work for love, simply to acknowledge, like, see me. Why do so many people walk past the unhoused and not even acknowledge that another human being is lying there? I understand that there are moments and times when they may be experiencing a mental health crisis. They're screaming at a wall as though it's a friend, enemy. And so, for our own safety, we may not, but there are many unhoused people. Not all of them are terrifying and scary in the moment. And yet, we still avert our eyes. We still turn away. He says he needs a miracle, or they say they need a miracle. This individual, this human, needs a miracle. We are the miracle that they seek, but are we willing to embody that truth and serve? A miracle is not some fancy extra. It's not like putting whipped cream on ice cream or on a cake or coffee or whatever. We are it. It's not this thing other than us. We are the way the miracles in life show up. The Good Samaritan is demonstrating, is practicing God, is being a miracle, is being humane in his treatment of another human being. So sometimes in life, we feel like, does life have you stuck? Sinking in the sands of, you could fill in the blank, sinking in the sands of political chaos, sinking in the sands of fear, of worry, anxiety, sinking in the sands of bankruptcy, homelessness, many things, right? Do you feel like you are sinking? And if so, what can we do? Many of us know this feeling in one way, shape, or form. We know it all too well. So, what do we do about it? How can we support one another in the process of getting out of the sinking sand, getting out of the problems in life, getting out of the gutter, whatever the concept? How do we support and help one another? Marianne Williamson says, the most powerful thought is a prayerful thought. When I'm praying for you, I am praying for my own peace of mind. I can only have for myself what I am willing to pray or wish for you. And we just say that about love. You can only love somebody to the degree that you love yourself. But we can't stop here. Feet and move your feet. Remember that prayer is a verb. Your life is your prayer and it is your amen. So the most powerful prayer is prayerful action. Practicing God, demonstrating God, expressing God. Breathe. Thich Nhat Hanh offers, to love is to recognize. To be loved is to be recognized by the other. Do you recognize yourself? Do you recognize yourself enough to be recognized by another? Remember the song? I love myself so much. That's recognition. So that I can love you so much. I recognize you. So that you can love you so much. Then you have your own recognition. And then you can recognize and love me back. In true love, you attain freedom. So living fully means loving fully, which means being free. None of us are free until all of us are free, which means none of us are loved until all of us are loved. None of us can live fully until all of us can live fully. Breathe and let that sink in. In fact, let's go back for a moment. Take it all in. Living fully means loving fully, which means being free. True love means you have attained freedom. Freedom from something and the freedom to something. Okay. When divine love becomes well developed, Maya begins to be withdrawn. Do you know what Maya is? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Breathe. Maya means ignorance. When divine love becomes well developed, ignorance begins to be withdrawn. Okay. So what does that mean? It means that in a dark, unwell lit backyard, it is easy to perceive that thing as being a snake. Yeah, you should pray for him. It's easy to perceive it as being a snake because you don't know. It's dark. Maya, ignorance, in his ignorance, his perceptions fool him, and he believes the perception to be true. And he responds based on the perception. So, our invitation, as one of the great sages used to tell the story about the rope and the snake, and, yes, this whole concept. I invite you to come back and read this. But the idea we're going to focus on: walking down a darkened road, a man sees a snake, his heart pounds, his pulse quickens. And yet, on closer inspection, the snake turns out to be a piece of coiled rope or a garden hose. At once, the delusion breaks and the snake vanishes forever. Similarly, our invitation, walking down the darkened road of ignorance, we see ourselves as mortal creatures. And around us, the universe of name and form, separation, a universe of conditioned causation, time, and space. We become aware of our limitations, our bondages, and our sufferings. And yet, upon closer inspection, both the idea of mortal creature and the universe both turn out to be Brahman. At once, the delusion breaks. Our mortality, as well as the universe, disappears forever. We see Brahman existing everywhere and in everything. Brahman, God, the divine, the infinite spirit. And that's when we understand, aham brahmasmi, I am that which the divine is, inseparable, infinite oneness, the all that is. Brahman, the highest universal principle, the ultimate reality of the universe. Aham brahmasmi, I am universe. I am the absolute. I am divine. This is what it means to be practicing God, to cultivate love and allow it to ascend into the experience of our lives. Love's ascent, in essence, is the resulting experience and conditions that arise within us and as us, physically, emotionally, spiritually, socially, intellectually. It can be likened to when we arise in the morning to begin our day. We awaken from sleep, and our waking consciousness is activated, and we live, move, and have our beingness from this awakened state, which then governs the activities of our day, the activities of our lives. We are no longer sleepwalking. We are no longer dreaming. We are no longer in that state. We are awake. And being awake changes how we move through life. So ask yourself, which woman's consciousness matches you? I don't want to wake up. I don't want to wake up. I don't want to get up. I don't want to wake up. I don't want to get up. I don't want to wake up. I don't want to get up. I'm awake and I'm ready to arise. I'm awake and I'm ready to arise. Time for me to arise and shine. Aham brahmasmi. I am the divine. Yeah, no, I broke into, I know. You didn't know you were getting a concert from now on during, okay, well, you are. But seriously, which consciousness are you ready to rise and shine? Is that your normal default setting? Or are you mired down? Oh, no, I don't want to get up. I don't want to pray. I don't want to meditate. I don't want to be nice. I don't want to be kind. I don't want to practice God. It's too difficult. The Science of Mind and Spirit 4.0 gives us the means to take flight and soar in our lives. And the more we embody it, the more we arise, like the new Superman in the James Gunn film. He says, I am as human as anyone. I love. I get scared. I wake up every morning and despite not knowing what to do, I put one foot in front of the other and I try to make the best choices I can. I screw up all the time, but that is being human and that's my greatest strength. Breathe. And the science of mind and Spirit 4.0 reminds us that we can declare and embody I am as divine as everyone and everything. I love because I am love. There are times that I feel afraid, lonely, frustrated, but nevertheless, I wake up and get up every day. And even though I have no idea what will occur, I take one step at a time, make one choice at a time, one breath at a time. I do my best to make the best. I do my best to make the best, most life affirming choices moment by moment. And even when I screw up, which is part of this thing called life, I do my best to correct, to heal, to forgive, and embody grace. And therein is my greatest strength and yours as well. Breathe. This week's affirmation, our declaration, my life. Oh, I'm jumping right into it. First, I'll say it. If it resonates with you, I invite you to repeat it with me the second time. My life expands to new heights because love lifts me and keeps me soaring. My life expands to new heights because love lifts me and keeps me soaring. This week's journal questions for your own personal practice or the Thursday night study group questions. What can I do this week to cultivate love and arise more fully? When have I operated from a misconception of what love, affection, and intimacy mean and look like in experience? Where did that misconception originate? When have I and when do I feel lonely? What can I do to help alleviate the epidemic of loneliness for myself and for others? What is the evidence that shows I am either living fully or not? You're not fully clean unless zestfully clean. I had to finish it. Number 5. When has Maya, ignorance, shaped a perception that I acted upon in non-life affirming ways? And lastly, what can I do to practice God more consciously and to think God more carefully? How can I embody Aham Brahmasmi more consciously? And our practice this week. Who is it? Oh, y'all switched up on me. Oh, what we doing here? For 1 week, experiment with all 5 love languages in the context of how love arises through your practice. Mhm. Embody as many of the love languages as you can with as many people as you can. For 1 week, experiment. Go for it. And we enter into that infinite space of prayer where we know, where we embody, where we arise in and as love itself, where we know that that which God is, source is, the infinite is, all of what it is, we are. Because there is no separation between it and us. There's only what it is as us. And so we breathe and allow this infinite awareness to move through us, to show up in expression as our actions, so that our affirmations are not relegated to words alone, that our prayers are not words alone, but that our affirmations and declarations and prayer show up as the way we live. They show up as the way we navigate life, the way we interact with other humans, the way we interact with nature. All of it is a prayer. All of it is our amen. So if I'm driving down the street and I throw a soda can out of the car, what then is my prayer? As I litter, what is my prayer? Road rage, what is my prayer? And I'm not saying that there are not going to be moments of road rage and frustration and fear. But as we heard from Superman, we make the mistakes and then we correct. With grace, we forgive, we heal, and we arise anew. So in this moment of this breath, we let go of any past mistakes, do what we need to do, recalculate, recalibrate, arise anew. It is a new morning. We need not carry Saturday's meal into Sunday's breakfast. My dinner last night has been ingested, has moved through my system. I release it in the morning into the temple called toilet. I flush, I release, and I let go. And from this new space, I then ingest breakfast, which then becomes lunch, which then becomes dinner. I arise anew, awake and ready. My actions demonstrate how I am practicing God boldly, moment by moment, breath by breath. My life is my prayer. My life is my amen. And that is true for myself and for all. The law says, yes, it does what it does. It manifests accordingly. So we breathe. And so it is. And so it is. Blessings. May you have a week filled with joy, filled with love, filled with gratitude and grand experiences. Blessings. See you soon.